Hello and welcome to Long Beach Lens. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson, Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. Today we have invited a very special panel of guests to discuss community engagement and veterans appreciation. Please join me in welcoming Vice Mayor of Long Beach, Rex Richardson, Executive Director of City Fabric, Brian Ulichevsky, and Manager of Political Voice and Advancement Project, Dr. John Dobard. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So, because we have a little time and lots of information, Dr. Dobard, I'd like to start with you. And if we speak to the subject of and the question of community engagement, government inclusion, and the changing demographics of veterans and appreciation for their great contribution to the country. When you think of those things, how do you bring that together in the work that you do?
Well, thank you. So let me start by saying the work that we do is focused on really fostering upward mobility for communities most impacted by economic and racial injustice. And part of the way we do that is by trying to create more opportunities for political participation, particularly from people of color, communities of color, particularly those that are low income. And one of the things we try to focus on, and one of the things that we think is very important for fostering community engagement or political participation, is to focus on developing, having well-developed outreach strategies. So we think it's important for governance or government decisions or anything that's related to governance to reflect the community. So if you have a diverse community, government should reflect that, both in representation and in government decisions. Those decisions should be informed by the wide range of voices that make up the community. The way to do that is by having very good outreach strategies. So whatever it may be, whatever decisions may be made or whatever government may be trying to do, so for example, trying to organize a Veterans Appreciation or Veterans Parade, you want to make sure that you're doing effective outreach to reflect the diversity in the community. So you want to do things like partner with community organizations that are serving veterans communities. You want to partner with them because they're the ones that are going to be working directly with that community and have the best, will be the best point of contact to make sure you have that something that reflects the diversity of the community that you're trying to reach.
Mm-hmm. Now, Brian, in the work that you do at your organization, when you think of this, how would that look from the lens that you see it through?
Well, you know, a lot of times what we're trying to do is have a conversation when we're doing engagement. And it is, you know, certainly as designers, as planners, we have an expertise, but, you know, when we're talking to the community, they have an expertise. They know their community. They know, you know, where people are crossing the street. They know, you know, what amenities are missing in the park. They have an idea of, you know, the facts on the ground. And so despite the fact that we are really deeply involved in this community, when we're working in North Long Beach to develop an open space plan, you know, we're asking, what are the facts on the ground? Here's what we see from 30,000 feet up. Here are the policies that can help us get to these places. But what are the ideas? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And, you know, some of the greatest ideas will come from the community. There's no monopoly of good ideas in government or the consultants they hire. Instead, it's a collaboration, it's a conversation.
And with these things in mind, I mean, Councilman and Vice Mayor, you've seen tremendous growth in the 9th District since you've taken over, and that's been with that community engagement, I would think, is a big impetus to that success, would you say?
Certainly. So, well, first of all, thank you again for, you know, every time we call, Long Beach Cap answers the call.
Sure.
So I think you're right. We've seen a tremendous turnaround in terms of just engagement by every measure, from participation in boards and commissions to, you know, civic engagement at City Hall and decision making at City Hall, and even the events that we've planned. And with the conversation today around veterans, how we, you know, sort of look at this opportunity to reimagine our Veterans Parade and Festival, we have to ask the question: are we designing this celebration around veterans? And when's the last time we've taken a step back and looked at what that demographically, what that actually looks like and how we engage them? This parade's been fantastic. It's happened for 20 years. And this is just a great opportunity to sort of hit the button, hit the reset button a little bit and just ask the question, what can we do better? We've seen, in North Long Beach, events like Beach Streets. Citywide event kicked off in North Long Beach, 30,000 people in attendance. You've had Activate Uptown, which was, closing down Artesia Boulevard, 15,000 people in attendance. Uptown Jazz Festival has gone for 5 years straight, had 7,000 to 8,000 people at Houghton Park, the same place as a launching point for the Veterans Day celebration. Now, while participation has been increasing, at the same time, we've noticed the participation in the Veterans celebration hasn't necessarily increased. And so how can we make sure that we take what we've learned about engaging and design around the veteran and around that individual community? How can we take that and make sure that those lessons learned are applied to how we celebrate our veterans? So that's why I'm really glad that we have the advancement project here. We have City Fabric here, because these folks are leading the conversation really in the region around rethinking how we engage around non-traditional things, right? Non-traditional approaches to engaging in government and in planning and in decision making. So that's really what this conversation is about.
Now, if I were to put on the hat of those who've been involved with that parade, in terms of, I'm sure that they have great pride in the efforts that they've put forth, and I know working with veterans, anytime we can acknowledge their sacrifices for the community, that's great. But what would they say would be some of the challenges that maybe they're facing? Because clearly your office is plugged in, as you said, the great successes are there. But what might that other perspective be that you would like to help address?
Well, that's frankly why we wanted to go through and have a series of conversations and focus groups. We've got a new Veterans Affairs Commission, we've got the parade committee, we've got the festival committee, and we've got North Long Beach residents and veterans citywide. We wanted to just put forth a process to capture input from all of those stakeholders.
And how would that be? How is that going to happen?
And so example is like today, we're hearing from advancement project, we're hearing from City Fabric, and then afterward we'll hear from veteran serving organizations like US Vets is joining us today, as well as Pacific Gateway, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But once we have a sort of a baseline, then we can build a plan, build a design based on that. And so that's where we are now. And I would just go to our panelists. I mean, what are some quick things you could share, or some of your thoughts on this conversation?
Well, I mean, obviously the community is changing, the veterans community, but also Long Beach and North Long Beach as a whole is changing. And our events and our program and things that are successful are also changing. But the physical environment of Atlantic is changing. We had one of the largest public investments in recent years with the Michelle Obama Library opening. A lot of investment in Houghton Park through the master plan, the community center, and other improvements, and then even along Atlantic Avenue, and that's even before private investments taking place. And so there's a lot of great infrastructure that, how does that change what our festival, our events, and how we celebrate and recognize our veterans? How can we best take advantage of that?
With that physical space in mind. And what would your perspective be, Dr. Dober?
Well, I would just reiterate what I mentioned earlier about outreach. We know that mobilization increases participation. It's one thing to tell folks, to send out a tweet or Facebook message and say this is going on. It's another thing to have someone go to their door and say, this is going on, we want to welcome you to this event. That's going to be more effective. And so, again, just reiterating, outreach matters. And partnerships with organizations that are already doing that mobilization matters. So what are the great organizations already in Long Beach that are working with the veteran population? Those are the folks that should be in the conversation and be at the table.
Well, in engaging these community members, the veterans, they take ownership in part of this process, and then they become stewards of what the results are. And if you have an authentic engagement process, they then take ownership of what those results are. And so it's a greater success for whatever program or project that is.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question. We only have about 4 minutes maybe left, but when you talk about knocking on doors, that's a lot of doors in the 9th District. And we're not just talking 9th District. I mean, we're talking about, that's where the parade is, but this is for all the veterans of Long Beach.
Yeah,
so that's
this
an army of people to be out there.
Yeah, absolutely, but this is why partnership matters. So here's a good example of this working. In Seattle, they have a complete community police commission up there. The commission wanted to get feedback from the community on draft policy recommendations. Well, to do that, they first partnered with 13 community organizations to hold forums in a safe space.
Okay.
That was one thing. But also, they partnered with over 100 organizations to do outreach. And that led to 3,400 people participating in these efforts in about 150 community meetings. You're absolutely right. It takes an army, and that's an example of this commission, through partnerships, building that army, and then having the great result of having community residents come out and participate.
Vice Mayor, we've got 2 minutes in this segment. How do you want to close it out with these guests that we have? What do you think is the essence of what we want to get from this conversation?
Well, I think, so thank you, Dr. Dobard, and thank you, Brian, for sharing your perspectives here. I think both of you are right. The strategy has to be centered around partnerships, right? So we have to make sure we open up, have a level of openness and transparency so people feel comfortable participating in this event. And Brian, I think you nailed it. I mean, there's a number of sort of opportunities, catalytic opportunities that haven't been there on the corridor that are here today. Michelle Obama Neighborhood Library, a number of new developments, improvements at Houghton Park, including the Veterans Plaza that we're gonna be breaking ground on very soon. I think all of that creates a real opportunity for us to hit the pause button and say, how can we reimagine how we engage our veterans, create a real sense of engagement for people, and through some of these built environment changes, how can we really anchor veterans to this area and create real economic development opportunities for the area, because it is the home for the last 20 years of the Veterans Parade? Those are the questions we can answer through this process.
So we're out of time in this segment, but gentlemen, I'd like to have you guys come back for sure, because what you're talking about is what we also focus on here at Long Beach Community Action Partnership, and what we do to serve the community. And with the Vice Mayor's support, we're doing that even more so in North Long Beach. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will continue with our discussion on community engagement and veterans appreciation. Stay tuned for more of Long Beach Lens. Welcome back to Long Beach Lens. I'm Derek J. Simpson, and we are having a panel discussion on community engagement and veterans appreciation with Vice Mayor of Long Beach, Rex Richardson. He's here with us, and joining us for the second half of the show is board member of U.S. Vets, Mike Murray, and Veterans Employment Assistance Program Coordinator for Pacific Gateway Workforce Investment Network, Deidre Vandegrift. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
So, Vice Mayor, we ended the first section of the show really quickly because we had so much information with great guests, but you had a closing thought as we go into this panel with the second half of the show as well.
Certainly, and just to be brief, because we really want to hear from our other panelists, the idea here as we rethink how we engage our veterans and how we celebrate our veterans, I think of the analogy of the balcony to the dance floor. A lot of times at City Hall, we like to design our solutions from the balcony, right? From a seat downtown and look at our problems across the city or look at issues across the city and say, this might be a great idea for a solution. But sometimes you have to go to the dance floor because the experience on the dance floor when the music changes is very different than the experience on the balcony, right? And so that means we partner with the organizations that are on the ground, on the dance floor to make sure that we design our solutions and design our approaches with the dance floor experience in mind. And so I'm really, really glad that we have our two guests with us today.
Yeah, so am I. And Deidre, I'm going to start with you because I was once on the Pacific Gateway Board, and I know the great work that you do, but I guess I was remiss in not really understanding totally what you do from a veteran's perspective. So for those who are watching who may or may not know all of it, can you share what your specific role is?
My specific role at Pacific Gateway is the Veteran Employment Assistance Program Coordinator. And what that entails and what that really means is I am the direct access to veterans and their employment and training needs. They come to our center seeking employment, and oftentimes there's a skills gap that they have, and we're able to use the funding that we receive from the Department of Labor to assist these individuals and send them to training with our local schools to provide them with the basic vocational certifications that they may need in order to be able to secure employment that has a livable wage.
Now, have you seen trends one way or the other in recent years where you're seeing maybe a lot more veterans or veterans with specific needs that maybe haven't been the same over the years?
Well, the employment trends for the veterans definitely is changing. A large majority of them returning recently have a desire to build a career in law enforcement.
Really?
Yes, and that has definitely changed. And they're seeking their services. They need the security guard, armed security is what we are leading them to so they can secure employment. Oftentimes the law enforcement careers and the application process itself can take months, quite some time.
Right.
So we're able to help them with their immediate need and get them some short-term training so that they can begin to build their resume in that direction of law enforcement and healthcare. A large number come out and they have the desire to build a career in healthcare and direct patient care. And so that's been a definite change in the trend of veterans.
Now, Mike, you're an icon in this city and in this community, and really glad to see you here. And I know you're also a veteran as well from a different war, different needs, different times. But tell us about the organization that you're here representing today and how that's going.
Sure. Well, first, I'm honored to be here with a published poet. And Vice Mayor, I would say to you that veterans and active service members love jazz. It's a soundtrack. So you're spot on with your festival.
We're on the right track here.
So U.S. Vets is the largest veterans serving organization in the country. There are 11 sites across the nation. The largest is in Long Beach and Inglewood. We house 550 veterans, families, women, men, and it's really a wraparound service. We do counseling, we do transitional housing, we do permanent housing on site, and we also do permanent housing in the community. and we follow up with all the veterans that we are working with. And we have I chair the advisory council, and I'm on the national board of U.S. Vets. 65% of all the men and women who come to U.S. Vets for help, they are either housed or in employment. So I think that's a pretty good success rate from where some of these people have been and where they're going to. And you know, you talked about the different wars. One thing I think that veterans appreciate, and you know this, is being with veterans. And anywhere you have veterans, you'll find that there is a connection. And it's a connection based on training, and it's a connection based on experience. And I think that's one of the advantages of U.S. vets. We have them from Iraq, Afghanistan, go way back to World War II. With like people, it's a healing process in and of itself to have someone who understands what you've been through and your experiences.
So let's stay on that point. You talk about being with like people and the healing process. In the first part of the program, we were talking about the parade, and we were talking about, you know, accessing the community to see what more vets might want, or the community might want, to engage them. When you think about a parade type of an environment or a festival type of an environment, from a vet's perspective, what would you think would be the healing process that they would like to be a part of on a day like that?
We've had a U.S. Vets Lunch now. This will be our 10th year coming up. And one of the things we have at our lunch is young Marines, kids in high school, will carry around helmets, and people will be able to make toasts into the helmets and honor someone, a family member or something like that. We also do a thing where this year we had drill sergeants, and people were doing push-ups. Someone will say, if Derek gives me 15 push-ups, I'll make a $100 donation. So if there's a military feel to it.
There you go.
And when you bring people together, whether they're active or veterans, you know, you can just feel it. You'll feel the room lift when these people get together and start to engage and exchange. So if it's a parade, I think my initial thought would be, the more veterans you get at the parade, the better, and get representatives from all the conflicts that you can get. I made a mistake. I thank veterans from the various conflicts, and I made a mistake that I didn't thank the Korean veterans. And believe me, I heard about it right away. And it's never happened again, right? So every military man I've ever met, women are proud of their service.
Right.
And now women are serving across the board in the military, including special forces. 20% of the military is women.
Wow.
And so that's something we really have to focus on. And more women are coming to U.S. vets to be served.
All right, so if we could start that parade out with a boot camp, you get a lot more people there, huh? I would challenge you, Mike, to push-ups. I think I can get you on those.
Well, I'll tell you, if we get enough guys out, if you've ever seen a military where they all get down and they start, you know, cranking out their push-ups, you know, that would be impressive at the outset.
Yeah, but it's that type of engagement that you really made the hallmark of North Long Beach and what you're doing in the 9th District in terms of getting people involved in creative ways. And when you hear this resources that we have in this segment, Vice Mayor, what would you like to see more of as it relates to your agenda there?
Well, so we began by going out and on social media and asking folks, you know, pitch your idea for, you know, how you would improve or better honor your veterans and dedicate it to a veteran with the hashtag #LBHonorsVets. Okay. And we've received plenty of ideas and suggestions, and that's what sort of helped us inform the selection of guests today, right? Okay. Folks, you know, what I've heard is, yes, people like to walk down the street, but they also want to give back, or they also want to make sure that there's a resource to put people to work, to where veterans in the area don't only see this event as a celebration, but rather a resource fair for them. How can you get into housing? How can you get a good job? How can you improve your life, right? And so Pacific Gateway, I'm sure, with all of the resources we have, there could be a better synergy there to where we build up all of our veteran serving efforts to really be the pinnacle on that day. And with U.S. Vets and all the work that U.S. Vets does, just having that level of credibility with veterans to know that U.S. Vets is on board with this event, U.S. Vets is building around this event, then I know that I can trust being involved with this event. And then I would just say that we try to integrate residents into every aspect of what we do. That's sort of the core element to our success, I think, in revitalization and in engagement in North Long Beach. And whether someone is a veteran or not, I think that we don't want to underestimate the impact that veterans have had in their lives. For example, myself was born on Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. My father, all my uncles were Air Force and Navy veterans. They were my heroes growing up. This is something on my desk at City Hall is an American flag flown over Scott Air Force Base where my father served and where I was born. And so for me, I want to make sure that when people come back every year, they have a deep connection, not just to an event, but rather they see themselves and their personal veteran reflected in that celebration.
We've got less than 2 minutes now. Real quickly, elevator pitch for Pacific Gateway.
Well, Pacific Gateway is your premier workforce investment network. We provide services for the veterans specifically. We serve them first, but we also provide services for the community in terms of employment and training. If you need employment and training, Pacific Gateway is where we are.
Mike, what do you say to the vets?
Long Beach has always been a veteran city, and it continues to be a veteran city. You've got one of the best VAs in the nation here. We just opened the Fisher House, and then you've got U.S. vets housing 500 veterans, getting them back into the live stream.
Yeah, the good news and the bad news is that it's great that we've got so much information here. Your leadership is always outstanding. What you guys are doing in your respective organizations is something that we want to wrap our arms around too here at Long Beach Community Action Partnership as best we can. The bad news is we're out of time. So thank you all for joining us. I'd like to thank Vice Mayor Rex Richardson, Brian Ulaszewski, Dr. John Dobart, Mike Murray, and Deidre Vandergriff for joining us on today's show. Be sure to follow PatNet TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest updates. We also welcome your comments and thoughts regarding this show as we strive to make Long Beach Lens a favorite source of local news, information, and entertainment. This show has been brought to you with the support from the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. Thank you for watching Long Beach Lens.
You're in.